Well, everybody, thank you for coming to Neighborhood Watch. Tonight we are going to be talking about personal defense laws and weapons, and this has come up on the request of multiple people. Part of what sparked this, I think, is a lot of the uncertainty that's going on in the country right now, a lot of being shown in the media. We've seen all over the country different riots or some kind of civil unrest or some kind of political unrest or something to the effect. And I'm very proud to say that Monte Vista has been a very peaceful community in that area. So I will gladly talk about this at the request of the people who helped put this together, and that would be all of you. So with that, we're going to go through and start talking about personal defense and weapon laws. So when it comes to defense, this is going to be the basics on what you need to know. The laws for defense, different types of weapons, and the laws about the weapons that are out there. So when it comes to defense laws, something that everybody needs to really consider is the idea of defending yourself to keep your life from being taken. And a lot of people are definitely curious about what in Colorado is called the Make My Day law, which sounds very dirty, hairy, but in Colorado it is not as dirty, hairy as it sounds. So we're going to talk about this. Legislators go through and review laws frequently for what level of force is allowed for what kind of situation. Colorado has the Make My Day doctrine, and we'll talk about what that means here in just a moment. So here in Colorado, as I said, legislators go through and consider this almost every year. So they'll go through and think about, well, they'll go through and say, well, what level of force is being used? We'll talk about what levels of force are. We'll talk about everything from defending yourself, somebody else, and property. These are all things that are considered when it comes to the defense of yourself and the harm that you can inflict on another, all the way up to and including taking somebody else's life. So this is actually a very serious and probably the highest, most principled set of laws that you are going to find in the state of Colorado. There's going to be a lot of legal jargon because legislators and lawyers like lots of very, very fancy words. So we're going to talk about a couple of definitions here. The first one is going to be imminent danger. And what imminent danger is that it is extremely apparent that there is danger. So, for example, here, Ken, come on up here. You're going to be my demonstration. No. Ken's just standing here, okay? Let's pretend for the sake of this that I'm not a cop, and I were to go through and say, look, man, is there an imminent danger there? I'm just saying, look, man. Now, if I go through and say, come here.
Gotta do it again.
Okay. Was there imminent danger there? Okay. Very clear, very present, very current danger. So,
is there a difference in imminent danger from males or females? Or children?
So, I will answer that question as it goes on. There's another definition that I will be able to come back to that and answer that. Okay? So if you'll give me just a moment, I'll answer that.
All right, thanks.
So, a person running at you and you feel he's about to hurt you, a person with a clenched fist reeling back to punch you, a person that has a gun and is starting to point it at you and you believe he will shoot. A person is making any action in which you believe he will hurt you. That is a list of the most common descriptions of imminent. Exactly. So, and this will go, there will be another definition. The same definition that I believe Mr. Salazar, that Jerry asked, that'll come into play on that. So bodily injury is any injury to the body, basically anything that causes pain. So if you go through and, for example, slap someone, okay? If it hurts them and causes redness, that is bodily injury. Serious bodily injury is any injury to the body that may cause permanent damage or disfigurement. That is a scar, that is the removal of some piece of flesh, of your digits, or effectively something that can kill you. Physical force. So physical force is any time a person touches another with a significant amount of force to control or cause any amount of bodily injury. These are examples of physical force: pushing, punching, controlling a person's arm, holding a person down, or using a weapon of some kind against another person. Deadly physical force is any amount of force that is likely to cause serious bodily injury or death to another. So this is a chokehold. Someone being struck repeatedly with the offender intending to kill somebody. So if you have someone who's sitting on top of another person and they're wailing on the guy, and the guy went limp a while ago and he keeps going, that's a pretty good indicator of deadly physical force. Shooting someone with a gun or a projectile weapon, stabbing someone, or striking someone with an object such as a stick, club, hammer, rock, martial weapon, or any weapon that could cause death or serious injury. Now this, we're going to be coming up on some of the answers to your guys' questions. Reasonable belief. Reasonable belief is a belief that anyone or almost anyone would believe the same thing if they were placed in the same position. It is very important to understand that you must be able to articulate why you believe that. And what articulate is your ability to speak it, the ability to tell the story. So, for example, with what happened with Ken, okay? How would you explain that he was in danger?
Well, I would have to explain his danger by your actions, how you looked, what posture you were taking.
Yes.
But when you first approached him and you said, "Hey, Ken, look," he immediately went back. And so what I'm seeing is there's so much vague interpretation in this. I mean, when it says a person, anyone would feel the same way. Well, maybe I'm just more paranoid than you are. Maybe you wouldn't feel that way. Maybe because you have physical or combat training or something, you might not feel that way at all about somebody running towards you.
So this is the general idea on that. Did I make motions that made you believe I would punch him? Did you believe that? 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 This is the most important because he would be the one acting in self-defense. But the idea is that every one of you said, "Yeah, I can see that," or something along those lines. Okay? So, reasonable belief, articulable facts, being able to describe why you felt that, why you thought there was a danger, and then being able to say it in such a way that she believed it, he believed it, he believed it, she believed it, and so forth. Another one that I will be touching on, and this goes back to why there's kind of a level of vague. There's another legal term called the totality of circumstance. Okay? So in this particular situation where I am a presenter and he was the person that I was presenting with, is it reasonable to believe when you bring that factor in that I was about to hurt him? So, from the view, the articulable facts, that is the context. The totality of circumstance is when the entire picture is brought into play. Okay? So the reasonable belief and the totality of circumstance are two very vague in definition statements that have very definitive answers. Does this make sense?
Definitive answers?
Definitive.
Vague but definitive answers?
So it's a vague question with a definitive answer.
Okay, all right. I'll hold my question till the end.
Okay. So next up, dwelling. This is a building where a person lives. This can be anything from a mansion to a humble house to, case law somewhere in Colorado, a box, I believe it was in Pueblo, a box that a homeless person had constructed a shelter from. Apartment buildings and so forth. This does not include the hallway going up to the apartments because people do not live there. Premises is land that you own or have legal right over. This includes barns, shed, garages, or other buildings that you do not live in. Property those are items that you own.
What about rentals?
What about them?
Are they treated in the same way as ownership?
When you reside in a place, that is your dwelling. You have your expectation of privacy over that rental. So whereas you are renting it, you have, for the purposes of defense, the same rights as ownership.
What about apartments that are locked down and you have to key enter? Isn't the hallway then part of your living space?
No.
So what if somebody breaks in? You have to run into your apartment before you take action?
Yes. Okay, and that gets explained. So this is where there's case law that makes that really foggy. By definition, the hallway is not part of the premises. So this is the law of self-defense as it pertains to yourself and others. Okay? Colorado Revised Statute, which is the big book or a series of books with all of the laws for the state of Colorado, 18.1.704 is the self-defense law. Article 1. A person using physical force upon another person in order to defend himself or a third person from what he reasonably believes to be the use or imminent use of unlawful physical force by that other person, and he may use the degree of force which he reasonably believes to be necessary for that purpose. Legal jargon and a half, right? You could reread that 15 times. Let me break it down for you real simple. Okay? You see someone using force on someone else, you have to believe that it is unlawful force, or that they are about to use unlawful force. And you have to respond to the least degree of force possible that you believe is necessary to avert that illegal action. So, if you see a very thin, frail individual going through and just swinging at Margot, I'm going to use you for an example. I hope I don't offend you. Okay? If Margot were to strike me in the vest, would you feel it would be justified to walk up and shoot her based on this? Is she that serious a threat if she were just slapping at my vest? Is it illegal physical force? Sure. But going through and shooting her? No. You can go through and hold her, restrain her. It would not be difficult for most of the people in here to go through and exercise that level of force against her. So, factors for consideration: unlawful physical force is being used or is eminently going to be used against the offender. That is the first thing that needs to be considered. If Margot would walk up and start slapping my vest, is it unlawful? The next one is the reasonable amount of force believed to be necessary. So this is Article 1, Page 1, Self-Defense Laws. So this is self-defense for the self-defense in the defense of others, deadly physical force. This is where the law very clearly defines what is to be considered when it comes to using deadly physical force, using any of those things that we talked about, using a gun, using a stick, club, martial weapon, knife. So, same law, 18-1-704, paragraph 2, deadly physical force may be used only if a person reasonably believes a lesser degree of force is inadequate. And is a very important word, because not only is the lesser degree of force inadequate, it must also have one of these other following conditions. A person believes that he or another person is in imminent danger of being killed or receive great bodily injury. Physical force is being used against another person during the burglary of a dwelling or a business, or it reasonably appears that someone is being kidnapped, robbed, or sexually assaulted. Basically, you have to believe that a lesser degree of force cannot be used, would not be successful in any way at all. And you or another person must be in danger. Yes, Jerry?
My understanding is you're telling us about how to make physical contact yourself. However, if there is something going on in the domicile, can we enter to stop it? If a woman's being accosted by a drunk male, or a drunk woman is accosting a male, what do? And you've already called 911 and there's imminent danger.
I am going to recommend the exercise of caution in something like that, because this is going to sound coarse, but this is just a possibility, okay? You hear a woman screaming. You know the guy's drunk, okay? You hear her slapping around. You enter the place. You shoot the guy. The girl goes, "Why'd you do that?" "It was foreplay." Okay? Now you unlawfully entered a residence and you committed a crime. Something to consider.
Those people don't live here, though. They live in Del Norte. So.
Would you repeat that one more time?
Repeat what?
You hear a woman being hurt.
Uh-huh. You hear what sounds like a woman getting slapped around. Okay? You look in the window, it appears that the guy's drunk. Someone breaks in, plugs the guy, or restrains the guy or something like that. She goes, "Oh, it's foreplay." That could be considered unlawful entry, because you just kicked a door. You didn't know the totality of the circumstances. Yes, there is the reasonable belief, but this is where arguments are made in court.
I don't want to, I know there's a million scenarios, and you've probably seen them all. But when I'm just looking at this, and it says, a person reasonably believes a lesser degree is inadequate. So there's somebody in my house, okay, uninvited. I wake up in the middle of the night, I hear somebody trying to pull my TV off the wall, okay? And I confront this individual. but he is not using physical force against anybody else in the house. He's just standing there with a TV. And he calmly looks at me and says, I'm leaving with my TV.
We will go to defensive property here in just a moment.
Okay, good enough. I mean, I like the TV.
So, deadly physical force. Reason to believe believes lesser degree of force is inadequate. Someone else is in danger. Those are the two factors that are absolutely required, which is why I put them in red and I made "and" so big on this presentation. The Make My Day law. This is the law that everyone likes to quote. Make my day. Make my day is not that simple. So the Make My Day law is CRS 181704.5, the use of deadly physical force against an intruder. Paragraph 2 specifically states, notwithstanding the provision set forth in section 181704, any occupant of a dwelling, that is you or anyone inside your house, is justified in using any degree of physical force, including deadly physical force against another person when that person has made unlawful entry into the dwelling and when the occupant has the reasonable belief that such other person has committed a crime in the dwelling in addition to uninvited entry, or is committing or intends to commit a crime against a person or property in addition to uninvited entry, and another and, when the occupant reasonably believes that such lesser or that such other person might use any physical force, no matter how slight, against the occupant.
Oh, that makes me feel better. Okay.
So, he takes your TV. I'm walking out the door. Is he using force against you? At all, whatsoever? Now, he has the TV. You say, you're not leaving with my TV. And he goes to push you. What do you got?
It makes me feel uncomfortable. It looks like physical. I don't know what he's going to do next. So I'm going to defend myself.
So, he's unlawfully in your dwelling?
Yep.
He's committing a crime inside your dwelling?
Yep.
Other than unlawful entry?
Yep.
And he's about to use physical force against you? Doesn't matter how slight?
Yep.
Okay. Under the Make My Day law, that's when you get to do it.
I'm going to shoot him in the foot.
There's a TV show that was back in the early 2000s where a priest was in a situation where he needed to use a gun. And someone said, Father, doesn't the good book say something about killing? He said, yeah, but there's a gray area when it comes to kneecaps. Defensive premises, so your property. This is not your dwelling. This is the barn.
Your car in the driveway.
No, the car in your driveway is property. Okay? Defensive premises. This is the land that you walk on. This is the barn. This is the shed. This is the garage. Any place you don't live, but still on the land you own. Okay. Use of physical force in defensive premises. A person in possession or control of any building, realty, which basically means land or other premises, or a person licensed or privileged to be thereon. So that is rentals, building, or renters, building managers, people who are supposed to be there, is justified in using reasonable and appropriate physical force upon another person when, to the extent that is reasonably necessary to prevent or terminate what he believes to be the commission or attempted commission of an unlawful trespass by the other person in or upon building, realty, or premises. However, he may use deadly physical force only in defense of himself or in another as described in 181704, which we discussed, or when he reasonably believes it necessary to prevent what he reasonably believes to be an attempt by the trespasser to commit first-degree arson. Before we even go into this world, we're going to discuss first-degree arson. CRS 184102. A person who knowingly sets fire to, burns, causes to be burned, or by the use of any explosive damages or destroys, or causes to be damaged or destroyed any building or occupied structure of another without consent. Okay. Building, occupied structure, dwelling. Okay. This is someone lives here. So you're not allowed to use, and see, this is where it gets interesting. When it comes to property, deadly force is off the table. Property's property. Okay? Life is more important than property, even if it's someone who's less savory, if you will. Okay? A person's a person's a person is a person. That's Colorado's rule on it. They're the worst person on the planet is more valuable than property. You can buy new property. Why does first-degree arson come into play? Why does anyone think first-degree arson comes into play?
Places, other houses, other, no?
Could be damage to more than your property, right?
No. Lives are more important than property. Who lives in your house?
My wife.
Your wife. Your kids. Your grandkids. Someone else. Purpose of this, right here, is to make sure that someone doesn't lock somebody in, set the house on fire, and kill them. That's why this exists. Okay?
So now if I catch a guy stealing a TV out of my garage, is that different than if it's an attached garage? Is that different than my house?
Great question. It depends. There is case law both ways. Okay? So there are a lot of the questions that you guys have, a lot of the questions that you've brought up are great questions and are very much under the purview of the courts. If it's an attached garage, some will argue, well, do you live in the garage? Others will argue, but it's attached to the building. Defense of property. This is things. This is stuff. This is not buildings. This is not structures. This is not dirt. This is property. This is your car. This is your TV. This is your car keys. This is the keys to your house. This is property. This is stuff. Okay? CRS 181706 says, title, Use of Physical Force in Defense of Property. A person is justified in using reasonable and appropriate physical force upon another person when and to the extent that he reasonably believes it is necessary to prevent what he reasonably believes to be an attempt by the other person to commit theft, criminal mischief, or criminal tampering involving property, but he may use deadly physical force under these circumstances only in defense of himself or another as described in 181704. This is where it gets interesting, okay? He takes the TV. He says, I'm going outside. He walks out the door. Are you inside your dwelling anymore? No. It's just stuff. So, if he were to push you, just out of my way, can you blow him away? No. It's just stuff. Deadly physical force is only allowed in defense of yourself or others, and it has to be to the amount to prevent that serious bodily injury, that imminent death, that problem.
Yeah, but okay, let's say he throws the TV away and he comes charging at you. You don't know
Well,
what he's got.
what did he just do?
He threw the way that dropped the TV and started attacking me.
Okay, but what did he do?
I don't know. What did he
He started attacking you.
Right.
Okay? Property doesn't become an issue at that point.
Right.
You become the issue at that point.
Right.
He's
Only
attacking
in defense.
you.
Right.
Okay?
But that's only if he's still in your dwelling.
No.
If he's out in the yard,
Out in the yard, so out in the yard is when it goes from any amount of force to the slightest degree to he has to try to kill you.
I'm not trying to play stump the band here, but, like this fella just said, mine's basically a follow-up. Once he leaves your house, and he's on your porch, and there's a sidewalk leading to the common sidewalk, is that still your property, your porch, and that sidewalk?
That is your premises. The dwelling is only the
House.
inside the walls that protects you from the weather. Okay? That is not your porch. That is not the steps
what about
going
a
up to the
glassed-in
door.
porch?
Huh?
What about a glassed-in porch?
Glassed-in porch? I hear case law when I hear you ask that question. I hear courts, and I hear a legal process that's going to go on for years.
And rich lawyers.
And rich lawyers.
I read a case law one time in my degree program at Adams about a gentleman went on vacation and he hooked up a shotgun to his door. And when somebody he was the only one that knew how to disable it. And there was a break-in in his house, and the guy that broke in had his chest blown out. And he was charged with murder. Because the guy was killed on his porch.
There was a lot more involved than that. So
There's
setting
no
a booby trap.
deadly force.
Setting a booby trap, okay, if he wasn't home and there was no one in that residence, he set a booby trap that killed somebody who was in danger. No one was in danger. UPS man. Milkman. Kids just going through and being mischievous children. Huh?
There's no milkmen anymore.
So, okay, there's laws against setting booby traps, okay? Because if you're not in your house and no one's in your house, what's in your house? Stuff. There's no threat to life.
Can the things that this perpetrator say to you, can that be added to your defense of yourself?
This is where the words reasonable belief. So, if Billy Bad Guy has a gun right here and says, "I'ma shoot you," does he have the opportunity to do that? Does it make it a little more believable? Billy Bad Guy in India that thinks he's going to talk smack over the phone because you didn't answer the question correctly regarding your car's extended warranty, if he says, "I'm going to shoot you," is that believable? Okay, yes, what they say can be a factor, but this goes back to the totality of the circumstances.
What about a non-fatal booby trap? Like a bear trap?
No. No, Ken. No traps. Traps are illegal. Traps are illegal. Okay, so another link down here. This is an interesting story about defensive property, okay? In Denver, guy walks into the driveway, starts to steal the car. Guy goes through and says, "He's not taking my car," takes his AR, runs out into the street, and goes pop, 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 pop. They find the car a couple of miles away, blood all over the seat, and the thief dead. What happened to Billy Badass with the firearm?
Got arrested?
For?
Murder.
Yes. Why?
Because it's just stuff.
because it's just stuff.
But with the totality of the circumstance is not what crime was committed, but the intent. He intended to save his life and his property. He did not intend to really kill the guy.
And you could make that argument in court, and I'm sure somebody did. Court is all about arguments going back and forth. Okay? So what about the enclosed porch?
What about if there was a baby in the back seat?
What about if the... Actually, really good question. My thought went...
Kidnapping.
My thought went immediately to, oh my God, did he hit the kid? Yes, kidnapping. All the way back to the first rule when it comes to self-defense. Can you outrun a car? Are you going to be able to run up to that car, catch it, rip the guy out? Okay? And there's a kid in the back seat of the car. There's a kidnapping happening. So, in that situation, I would say that there is a safe argument for self-defense. The problem that I would say, which is, like I said, straight to where my mind went, kid in the back seat of the car, there's stories upon stories upon stories upon stories of kid in the back seat of the car, someone unloads into the car, the kid's the one that gets hit.
Now, if a guy was stealing your car and you run out there with your AR and you stand in front of the car and say, you're not taking my car, and he screeches the tires and tries to run you over,
What's he doing?
he's going to get shot. That's what he's doing.
But what act is he committing? This goes, the most important thing when it comes to self-defense, especially if you ever have to pull the trigger, is that very fancy lawyer word, articulate. Okay? You can't go through and say, during the interview with the cops, well, what was happening? Well, he was fixing to get shot. Well, why? Because if fixing to get shot is the only answer you got, there's going to be some lawyer somewhere that goes through and say, he was just out to kill somebody. If you say, I was standing in front of the car was not in reverse, the car was coming towards me. We all know what happens when someone gets impacted by a car.
I have a question, a what if, or not maybe what if, but are these the same rules and advice given to professional crime fighters as yourself?
Okay, so I am not giving advice. At no point is any of this advice, okay? I am simply outlining what is said, okay? So, when it comes to rules, we have a whole list of rules. We have 18.1.704 that needs to be observed, 18.1.706 which needs to be observed, and then we have two other sets of laws beside that we need to follow. Okay? So
perhaps there's someone, a mad woman, who takes a shot at you and misses. Is it common sense to return fire? Or is that the situational?
totality of circumstance.
Yeah.
Okay? The words totality of circumstance are huge. I will not answer that what if for one very specific reason. I am not in that situation at this very moment to go through and be able to answer it. Okay? That's and that kind of question is very prevalent in the nation right now. Why was that level of force used?
I tried to in my little head, realize the totality of the circumstance, like the whole community of Monte Vista, and trying to relay it to my block where I live. And I don't have those issues, but if there was, what am I responsible for?
Okay. So Ken, can I use you for a guinea pig again? You can stay seated this time. And do you mind if I touch you? Okay. How's it going, man? Now say he didn't know I was coming. Okay, just that action right there. And it startled him a little bit. And he looked at me and goes, "Son of a bitch, pow!" Okay? Totality of circumstance. Was there a threat?
Could have been. Well, in nowadays, because the whole thing going on with police force and all that, and if you were actually in uniform and did that, it could have been determined that you were becoming hostile with me, right? I mean, according to the news anyways.
I'm not going to speculate with what's going on around the country right now.
But you know what I'm saying, somebody would blow it out of proportion.
So you asked, I'm kind of glad you brought that up though. You asked, are we held to this? Yeah, we're held to this. We have like I said, there's the laws that the general public is held to, and then there are extra laws that police are held to besides that. We have more rules that we need to follow. All right, so we're going to get this going. So now we're going to talk about different kinds of weapons because I know a lot of people are curious about those things, especially as it pertains to self-defense. So we have a bunch of different options here when it comes to firearms. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of these kind of quickly because I know we've been going a little while. I'm going to try to wrap this up as fast as I can. So the first thing on the list here when it comes to firearms is shotguns, okay, for self-defense. Thing that's nice about shotguns, they're high power and low penetration, okay? The reason why I bring up low penetration, this is something that'll be addressed later. High power, low penetration, and a low need for training, okay? When I say a low need for training, with a shotgun, it has a spread pattern. So when you point it down, say a hallway, you can count on pretty much anything in that hallway being hit. Whereas for some of your other options like a handgun or a rifle, that wouldn't be the case. Low penetration, it means it doesn't go through walls the same, okay? That's kind of an important factor, especially when it comes to when you have other people in the house or people across the street from you. Cons on shotguns are they're not very mobile. You can't just pack one of these in your back pocket, walk out the door, and carry one around with you. We do have open carry laws. Long guns are included in open carry. It's not very practical. Another con, like I said, is a wide damage pattern. You point a shotgun down the hallway, everything in the hallway is going to get hit. Next one is handguns. Okay, everybody's seen a handgun. They have they're very mobile and concealable. These are the pros to them. Some handguns have low recoil, other ones have high recoil. But for most defense handguns, you're going to have a lower recoil, definitely lower than a shotgun. The cons to it is there's a high need for training. You are going to be training constantly. As I said, Colorado has open carry laws, but if you're going to conceal a handgun, it requires a permit. In order to get a permit, you need to go through and get specialized training and a certificate for that training. Then you need to go through additional background checks through the Colorado Bureau of Investigations. And in some counties, the sheriff has the option not to issue one any way it's cut. Rifles, okay? They're long range. They're good for in the county or on a ranch. Cons to rifles, they have high penetration, which means they're bad for urban environments. Okay, I think having a rifle for the purpose of self-defense is a horrible idea. And when it comes to recommendations and advice, I would argue against having a rifle for self-defense. Once again, there's a high need for training, and again, they're not very mobile. All firearms have a very high intimidation factor, regardless of your size, regardless of your fitness level, regardless of where you stand. If someone pulls a gun, it makes the other person on the other side of the gun think twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and 6 times. It has a high threat stop rate, whether you pull a trigger or not. Generally, if you pull a gun out, someone's going to sit there and go, a crook might go, not worth that. Or if you engage, or if they engage, and you engage back with a firearm, it tends to stop the threat very quickly. The cons to a firearm is very important for people who have been in the military. They're a little more acquainted with it. The results are permanent. The results of pulling the trigger are forever. That requires a lot of mental preparation. If you have a gun, you have to know that you are prepared to pull the trigger. Because if you are not, you have a paperweight that someone else can use as a weapon against you. It is something that takes a great deal of soul searching and consideration as to whether or not you are willing to do it. And if you are not willing to do it, I do not recommend using a firearm for self-defense at all. Tasers and stun guns. These are a different option. Some of them have little things that can project out. Some of them are just little touch. And they have a very intimidating factor when you go through and just set them off. That makes a lot of people jump. If someone is in a situation where they are advancing on you and you pull out a stun gun and you arc it, I have seen people run. From just that, I've seen other people stop completely.
That's why men don't ask for in directions.
Huh?
That's why men don't ask for directions. They're afraid a woman's going to pull one out of her purse.
So, pros and cons, okay? Not usually, the pros are they're not usually lethal. Takes much less mental preparation. So, I mean, it's not exactly one of those permanent things, okay? You're trying to stun them. Has a high intimidation factor, like I discussed. And it physically incapacitates with what's called neuromuscular incapacitation. So basically, when you hit someone with a stun gun, with a taser, it causes the muscles to lock up. So they will freeze, almost standing straight up. The cons to it: the probe cartridges are single use. You squeeze the trigger on a taser, that taser's done. You only get one opportunity to use it, and that's if it projects out. That's if there's if it's a type of taser that projects probes out. Okay, there's other ones that they'll have a little wire that goes with them. There's other ones that just are close contact. You push the button, you can use that thing as many times as you want, as long as it holds a charge.
Are they available to civilians?
Yes, they are. Every one of these you see here, except for, I think, that top yellow one, is available to civilians.
I thought the wires that were still attached to the gun, but now the probes are in somebody's skin or something, that can be zapped more than once.
So when I say single use, I mean you can only send the projectiles out once. Okay?
Would you recommend those and the paperweight in lieu of a pistol?
I don't recommend a paperweight at all. Okay.
Would you consider someone in your house that hasn't produced a weapon because of the conceal and carry laws to be armed and dangerous?
Okay. So I'll get back to some of your questions. I've really got to go through this for a little bit more. We're running out of time, but I will happily answer your questions after. All right? Cons, it doesn't always disable your target. You can go through, there are some people that you can walk up to them and shock them, and it will hurt, but it will not disable them, and the only thing it's done is upset them. Another, I have it listed as a con, is some training is ideal. And when I say it's ideal, you still have to worry about aim, you have to worry about reloading a cartridge without shocking yourself. You need to know how to use it, how effective it is, because some are literally just a deterrent to cause pain and back away, and other ones are there to disable.
Do they require a license, or do you get training on it on your own? Or
when it comes to tasers and stun guns, it's on your own. Okay, any training you would get is on your own. There's no license to carry it. The only real caveat is a person commits a classified felony if he knowingly and unlawfully uses a stun gun in the commission of a criminal offense. If you go through and shoot someone with a taser, what does it do in every situation? It causes pain and that redness, which means you have caused bodily injury. Now, if you do it because, you know what, I don't like that you got a smile on your face, pop. Now it's assault. And you just used a stun gun to do it. That takes it from here to here, from a misdemeanor assault to a class 5 felony. MACE and OC. I know a lot of people talk about MACE and OC. The thing that's really nice about OC, it is non-lethal. OC is it's an abbreviation for a long scientific name that I have trouble pronouncing most days, and it is basically what is in peppers that makes them spicy. It is extracted, and it is concentrated, and it is all of the spice of the worst pepper you've ever scratched your eye with.
So when somebody says pepper spray, they're talking about OC.
Mm-hmm.
What's MACE then?
I'm not sure.
Like tear gas kind of stuff?
No,
or what?
tear gas is different.
Okay.
Okay.
it's a ball on a chain on a stick.
So it has a moderate intimidation factor. As far as PROSA has moderate intimidation factor, it is non-lethal. I am not familiar of any situation where there is an allergy to OC or any death that came from OC. Okay? I know that there's arguments out there about how OC is against the Geneva Convention. These are not weapons of mass destruction, which the Geneva Convention talks about. This is an irritant. It is annoying. That is what OC is. It's easily purchased. Anyone in the US can buy it, as long as you're over the age of 18. And it is very portable. It comes in all of these nifty little things, including this thing that looks like a gun, this thing that goes on your keychain, this thing that is concealable and looks like lipstick, and the big fire extinguisher, ominous looking fogger thing. Cons. Cons. If you will notice, I do not carry OC on my belt. I enjoy pepper. I do not enjoy it in my eyes. OC is indiscriminate. If I were to let OC loose in this room right now, we would all feel it, including me, and it doesn't matter what direction I point it. You catch the wind the wrong way, it is going in your eyes. Or, if you're a very special individual like this guy right here, you can spray it in your own face. A lot of the stuff I've seen has safeties that generally prevent this, but it can still happen. And when I say it is indiscriminate, it does not care if you are a small child. It does not care if you are disabled. It does not care if your buddies are there to help you. It will get everybody. It is affected by weather, as I was talking about the wind blowing. It is not for use indoors. If you go through and use it for self-defense inside your house, you have disabled yourself. And the last one is it is flammable. Okay? So
You could use it as a torch.
flamethrowers. Okay, so now that we've talked about the most common types of weapons that people like to discuss and how easily they're accessed, let's talk about the laws associated with weapons and their use. These are a list of illegal and dangerous weapons. Colorado Revised Statute 1812-102 defines dangerous and illegal weapons as firearm silencers, machine guns, short shotguns, short rifle, and ballistic knife. These are dangerous weapons. Knowingly possessing a dangerous weapon is a Class 5 felony just for the first offense. Illegal weapons are blackjacks. Does everybody know what a blackjack is? Okay, so a blackjack is a leather strap that is generally filled with lead. It's kind of floppy looking, but it is very heavy. It can cause a lot of damage. A gas gun. This is, by definition, not what you would think it is. It is a device that is capable of launching a canister that disperses gas. So basically,
It's a potato gun.
it's a potato gun that goes through and shoots some kind of gas out. And metallic knuckles, brass knuckles. Knowingly possessing an illegal weapon is a Class 1 misdemeanor.
What is a ballistic knife?
You know,
It's one that gets shot out of a pen
Yes.
or something like that.
yeah.
You know,
A switchblade.
No,
no, something
No,
that
it
actually,
actually
leaves the
Okay.
yeah.
It actually shoots. It's you pull out this little thing and it goes like this, and a knife.
And there's no law against the size of knife you can carry as long as it's not concealed.
3.5 inches.
What about hunting?
There is an exception to carrying I believe we actually talk about this, certain sizes of weapons, their purpose, the fact that you carry it in the open is also important.
And you can get a license for a silencer.
Huh?
And you can get a license for a silencer.
Yes. You have to get a federal license for a silencer. You can get a federal license for anything on the dangerous weapons list, and there's an exclusion in the law or for where it's okay to possess these things. Because it's okay for National Guard to have these. It's okay for active duty police to have these. It's okay for federal agents to have these. It's okay for licensed people to have these. There's a list of exceptions that's fairly long. Concealed weapons laws. Okay, so Colorado Revised Statute 1812-105 says carrying a concealed weapon without a permit is a Class 2 misdemeanor. This does not apply to in your house or your car. Okay, so if you are in your house and you just carrying something behind you, you're on private property. This is for in public. Okay, this is for on the road, at the gas station, in the store, someplace that is not your house or inside your car. A second offense within 5 years becomes a Class 5 felony. CRS 1812, Colorado Revised Statute Title 18, Article 12, Part 2. It has a total of 16 statutes associated specifically to the requirements for carrying a concealed weapon in the state of Colorado. CRS 1812-203, Paragraph 1, Subparagraph H, Subparagraph 6 gives the requirements of a concealed carry training as one of the criteria for gaining a concealed carry permit. You have to be trained in the use of the weapon and the laws regarding concealed carry in order to go through and do this. I know there are concealed carry classes around. I know the sheriff's office, I'm pretty sure they still put one on. But you got to go through and get that training before you can go through and do that. Prohibited use of a weapon. This is some interesting need to know stuff, mainly pertaining to firearms. CRS 1812-106. 1A says knowingly and unlawfully aims a firearm at another person. Just going through and pointing a gun at somebody and you do not have lawful justification to do so, lawful justification as it applies to use of force, because it's generally one of those eminent factors. If you pull a gun, it's believed you're going to use it. So if you point a gun at somebody unlawfully, there you go. Recklessly or with criminally negligence discharges a firearm. Going through and laying on your back and shooting your gun up into the sky screaming, ah, yeah, that's bad. Making a trip trap with a gun or explosive device, Ken. And D, a person that is in possession of a firearm while under the influence of intoxicating liquor or controlled substances. If you are high, if you are drunk, if you are in any way under the influence, the person in possession, all you have to do is possess the firearm. If you have had one sip of alcohol, if you do not blow on a PBT .000, and you have a firearm in your possession, you broke this law. CRS 1812-106.5 says a person commits a class 5 felony if he knowingly and unlawfully uses a stun gun in commission of offense, which we talked about. 18.9-106, paragraph 1, subparagraph F, and part of subparagraph 1A, a person commits disorderly conduct if he or she intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly, not being a peace officer, displays a deadly weapon or fashions in a manner causes a person to reasonably believe the article is a deadly weapon or represents verbally or otherwise that he or she is armed with a deadly weapon in a public place in a matter calculated to alarm, breaks this law. So,
Is this a felony or a misdemeanor?
disorderly conduct, I believe, is a petty offense.
Is what?
A petty offense.
Okay.
So, if someone starts getting lippy and they're a distance from meeting you, they're just getting lippy, they're just running their mouth. You have a concealed weapon and you kind of go, disorderly conduct. That's all they're doing, they're just running their mouth. And you go through and you present that. You have some kind of civil dispute going on. You display that you have a gun, or you stick your hand in your pocket and go, I got a gun. Disorderly conduct. If you're in the grocery store and you pull out the gun, you start waving around and going, I got a gun, and everybody starts running scattered. Disorderly conduct.
So back on the concealed, you could have your pistol on the seat in the front seat of the car, as long as it's in clear view.
It can be in the glove box. Like I said, inside your car is an exception to the concealed carry. You can put it under the seat, you can put it in the glove box, you can put it in the center console, you could leave it on the side of the seat. It doesn't have to be visible. You really need to go through, if you're contacted by law enforcement, and say, I got a gun and this is where it's at. But it can be anywhere in your car. You
What
can
about
drive it in
loaded
your
or
car.
unloaded? If you don't have a concealed weapons permit and you have a gun in your car, does it have to be unloaded?
I don't know any law that says that.
Okay, because in Michigan, you have to have the ammo in a different part of your car.
Yeah, Vermont was the same way. Vermont was the same way. Colorado doesn't have that law that I know of. Oh, illegal discharge of a firearm. This is huge. CRS 1812-107.5, the illegal discharge of a firearm. Any person who knowingly or recklessly discharges a firearm into any dwelling or any other building or occupied structure or into a motor vehicle occupied by any person commits the offense of illegal discharge of a firearm. Illegal discharge of a firearm is a class 5 felony. What is important about this? Okay? And this is why I was talking about not having a rifle for defense in a city. A rifle is a very high power cartridge. When you squeeze the trigger on a rifle, it can go through your target at close range, through your wall, through your neighbor's wall, through your neighbor's kid's bedroom wall, through your neighbor's kid, and keep going. Self-defense or not, you recklessly discharge a firearm into the dwelling of another because you did not take into consideration the power of that firearm. Say you miss your target completely. Say you get like some kind of fletchet round. You miss your target and it goes through the window. of your neighbor and hits somebody, or just hits the building, you're in violation of this law. Okay? So, you are accountable for every round that you shoot. Every time you pull the trigger, you are responsible for that round from the time that it leaves the gun to the time that it stops. In law enforcement, we have a saying, there is a lawyer at the end of every bullet. Every one of them. Going through and discharging a firearm can have very severe consequences, even if you don't hit anything. In conclusion, all of this boils down to it's your choice. Should you use force? And if you do use force, are you going to be able to explain why it was reasonably necessary? The totality of the circumstances will be considered after force is used. Using any level of force can have serious consequences. Always consider everyone around you. Be safe for yourself and for others. And when in doubt, don't. Okay? So that's what I have for that. So there is one more thing that I kind of wanted to touch on. Going back to the situation that, Jerry, you asked about, if when it comes to entering somebody's place. In today's day and age, there's kind of lawyers on the other side of every situation. That's something to keep in mind. But something that I would like to bring up regarding totality of circumstances. It sounds like, say the scenario I was talking about where the guy's drunk, she's getting slapped around, and, well, you go through kicking the door and, oh, well, it was just foreplay. What about the situation where she's standing at the window and he's holding her back and she's screaming, "Please help me"? Changes the scenario. The problem that we face in the world we live in, and us specifically in law enforcement, is there's not always an easy answer. And even when the answer seems right, someone may see it otherwise. And that is something that we are facing every day.